I was falsely accused of SA by my 13-year-old niece. My family downed me. My boyfriend Oliver left, and I lost everything. But 6 months later, the truth comes out. And now they want to reconcile. No way. So let me set the scene. Back then, I was doing pretty well for myself, had a solid job in project management, owned a decent apartment in a nice part of the city, had friends, had a life. Nothing fancy, but I'd worked hard to build something stable. After years of grinding through college and entry-level positions, my family and I were tight, or so I thought. Sunday dinners, holiday gatherings, the whole 9 yards. My sister Sarah and I especially were close. We'd grown up looking out for each other. And when she had her daughter Melissa, I was there at the hospital, first one besides the dad to hold that kid. I loved being an aunt, took the role seriously, you know. I'd show up to Melissa's school events, help her with homework when Sarah was swamped with work, taught her how to ride a bike, standard aunt stuff. The kid was smart, funny, a little dramatic sometimes, but what teenage girl isn't? Sarah was a single mom after her divorce when Melissa was 8, so I tried to step up when I could. Nothing weird, nothing inappropriate, just being family. Melissa was always a bit of a handful, though. Sarah had this parenting style where she basically never said no to the kid. Whatever Melissa wanted, Melissa got. New phone, sure. Skip chores, no problem. Talk back to adults, just teenagers being teenagers, right? I'd mentioned to Sarah a few times that maybe some boundaries would help, but she'd get defensive. Said I didn't understand because I wasn't a parent. Fair enough, I guess. But there was this one incident about 6 months before everything went nuclear. We were all at my parents' house for some random Sunday gathering. Melissa was in one of her moods, being disrespectful to our mom, rolling her eyes, making snide comments. I pulled her aside, not even yelling or anything, just said something like, "Hey, that's your grandmother. You need to watch your tone." She looked at me like I'd slapped her, got this cold look in her eyes I'd never seen before. Then she stormed off to Sarah, and I heard her complaining about how I'd embarrassed her in front of everyone. Sarah came over, told me to back off, that she'd handle her own daughter. I apologized, dropped it, figured it wasn't worth the drama. Should have paid more attention to that look Melissa gave me, though. That was the first red flag I completely missed. Fast forward to late spring, 3 years ago. My parents were throwing a barbecue at their place. Pretty standard family thing. Burgers and hot dogs, cousins running around. That suburban weekend vibe. I showed up after work, still in my button-down, but I ditched the tie. Everything seemed normal at first. Melissa was there with a couple of her friends doing that thing where teenage girls huddle together and whisper. I said hi. She barely acknowledged me. Whatever. Teenagers are moody. About an hour into the barbecue, Sarah pulled me into the kitchen. The second I walked in, I knew something was wrong. Her face was pale, hands shaking, this look of absolute rage in her eyes. Before I could even ask what was up, she got right in my face and said, "Did you touch Melissa?" I'm standing there, completely confused. What are you talking about? Did you touch her? My brain literally couldn't process what she was asking. Touch her? Like what? A high five, a hug? What was she even saying? Then she spelled it out, and I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. She said Melissa had come to her the night before crying, saying I'd touched her inappropriately, that I'd assaulted her. I just stared at Sarah, waiting for her to laugh, to say it was some sick joke, but she wasn't laughing. She was dead serious, and she was looking at me like I was the worst thing that ever existed. Sarah, that never happened. I would never. She didn't let me finish. She slapped me hard right across the face. Then she started screaming at me to get out, that she was calling the police, that I was disgusting, that she never wanted to see me again. My parents came running in, other family members crowding the doorway. Everyone staring at me like I'm some kind of predator. I tried to explain, tried to tell them this was insane, that I'd never done anything wrong, but nobody wanted to hear it. Sarah was already on the phone with the cops, and my mom was crying, and my dad looked like he wanted to hit me too. The only thing I could think to do was leave before things got worse. I left that barbecue in a daze, drove home on autopilot, sat in my apartment, and just tried to process what had happened. My niece, this kid I'd helped raise, had just accused me of something so vile I couldn't even wrap my head around it. And my sister, my own sister, who'd known me my entire life, believed it without even asking for my side of the story. Oliver, who'd been distant lately, texted once, "What the hell is going on?" and then went silent. By the end of that week, he said he needed space. He was gone. The police showed up at my apartment that evening. 2 detectives, all business. They asked me to come to the station to answer some questions. I went voluntarily because I had nothing to hide. Told them exactly what I'd been doing the night Melissa claimed this happened. Turns out I had a pretty solid alibi. I'd been at a work dinner with my entire team that night from 6:00 in the evening until almost midnight. 15 witnesses, restaurant receipts, everything documented. The detectives seemed skeptical of the accusation from the start, but they had to investigate. They interviewed Melissa multiple times. Her story kept changing. First, she said it happened at my apartment. Then she said it was at my parents' house. Then she couldn't remember exactly when. The timeline she gave didn't match anything. One detective told me later off the record that they see false accusations sometimes, but they still have to investigate thoroughly. I appreciated his honesty, but it didn't make the process any less destructive. Every interview felt like I was being treated as guilty until proven innocent. Every question felt loaded. The worst part was waiting. Waiting for them to verify my alibi, waiting for Melissa's story to fall apart. Every day that passed was another day my life hung in limbo. Meanwhile, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing with notifications. People I hadn't talked to in years were reaching out. "Hey girl, heard what happened. Is it true?" Real supportive stuff. I ended up changing my number after the first week. See, here's what nobody tells you about being accused of something like this. Even when you're innocent, even when the evidence proves you didn't do anything wrong, people still look at you differently. Within 2 days, my entire neighborhood knew. Someone had posted about it on social media, didn't use my name, but gave enough details that everyone figured it out. My landlord called me 3 days after the accusation, said other tenants were uncomfortable with me living in the building. When I asked what grounds he had to kick me out when I hadn't been charged with anything, he backed off, but said he was keeping an eye on the situation. Work was worse. My boss brought me in for a meeting, said maybe I should take some time off. I told him I had an alibi, that the police would verify it. He gave me this practiced sympathetic look and said it wasn't about guilt or innocence. It was about optics. The company couldn't afford to have someone under investigation working there. They'd keep me on paid leave for now, but the implication was clear. That meeting crushed me more than the accusation itself. This was a company I'd given 6 years of my life to. I'd worked weekends, pulled all-nighters on projects, trained new employees, and the second things got complicated, they threw me out. Didn't matter that I was innocent. I told him I was innocent, that I had an alibi, that this was clearly false. He gave me this look like he wanted to believe me, but wasn't sure. Said it was just temporary, just until things calmed down. That temporary leave turned into me being quietly pushed out within a month. Couldn't go to the grocery store without people whispering. Couldn't go to the gym without someone staring. Old friends stopped returning calls. People I'd known for years just ghosted me. One friend sent me a text that said, "I don't know what the truth is, but I have kids, so I can't associate with you right now." I understood perfectly. Everyone was protecting themselves. The gym was particularly bad. I'd been going to the same place for 4 years. After the accusation, people would move to the other side when I showed up. Finally, I just stopped going, canceled my membership, and worked out at home. My parents sent a single text during those first 4 months. It said, "We're praying for the truth to come out," not, "We believe in you." Just a vague statement about truth. Their silence said everything. The few family members who did reach out were worse. My aunt said she had to protect her own children first. My cousin asked if I'd take a polygraph test. My uncle suggested I apologize to Melissa to smooth things over, apologize for something I didn't do just to make everyone comfortable. People I hadn't spoken to in years came out with their takes. "I remember you being kind of quiet in school," became, "You were always creepy." Every normal aspect of my personality got reframed as suspicious. The worst part was, I kept thinking it would all blow over once the truth came out. I kept thinking, okay, they'll investigate, they'll see Melissa's lying, and everyone will apologize and we'll move past this. I was naive as hell. 4 months into this nightmare, the police officially closed the case. No charges filed. My alibi was rock solid. Melissa's story had more holes than Swiss cheese, and there was zero evidence anything had happened. I thought that would be the end of it. Finally, vindication, right? Wrong. Because by then, I'd already lost my job. My reputation was destroyed. I'd burned through most of my savings on a lawyer. And the people who'd turned their backs on me, they didn't suddenly welcome me back with open arms. Most of them still looked at me like I was guilty. No charges doesn't mean innocent. That kind of garbage. I moved to a different part of the city, found a new apartment in a neighborhood where nobody knew me. Started job hunting, which was brutal. Background checks didn't show an arrest, but Google did. My name was associated with the accusation online. Someone had archived the original social media post. I tried everything to get it removed. Nothing worked. Had to explain it in interviews. Most HR people would get this shift in their expression when they brought it up. I'd walk them through the whole story. Falsely accused, fully investigated, completely cleared. Some were understanding. Most said they'd keep my resume on file. One interview destroyed me. The hiring manager seemed great. Multiple rounds of talks. Then he said the company couldn't move forward. They'd seen the accusations online. He said he personally believed me, but his hands were tied. I sat in my car for an hour afterward. Eventually landed a new job. Less pay, less prestige. The company was smaller, more willing to take a chance. My new boss had his own unfair situation years back, understood how the system works. That job saved me. I started rebuilding from scratch, made new friends who didn't know my past, kept my head down, learned to be careful about who I trusted. I started seeing a therapist because the paranoia was getting bad. I'd second-guess every interaction, wondering if people were Googling me later. And I made a decision. I was done with my old family, completely done. Not in an angry way, not in a revenge way, just in a practical, self-preservation way. These people had proven they couldn't be trusted. They'd chosen comfort over truth, panic over patience, and in doing so, they'd shown me exactly where I stood in their priorities. Dead last. Much later, when life steadied and trust meant something again, I met Max. But that part of the story comes after the storm. 6 months after the investigation closed, Sarah called me. First time I'd heard from her since she'd slapped me at that barbecue. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. She sounded terrible, like she'd been crying for hours, said she needed to tell me something, that it was important. That's when she dropped the bomb. Melissa had admitted she lied. The whole thing was made up. Some girls at her school had apparently put her up to it. Revenge for me scolding her that time. Melissa had been feeling guilty, started acting out, and eventually broke down and confessed to Sarah. Sarah was sobbing, apologizing over and over, saying she should have talked to me first, should have asked for my side, should have done literally anything besides immediately destroying my life based on a teenager's accusation. I sat there listening to her cry, and I felt absolutely nothing. No relief, no anger, nothing. Just this empty coldness. The validation that I'd been innocent all along should have meant something. Should have felt like vindication, but it didn't because the damage was already done. I'd already lost everything. Knowing I was right didn't bring back my job, my reputation, my sense of safety, or the year of my life I'd spent in hell. When she finally stopped talking, I asked her one question. Did you ever even once think to ask me if it was true before you destroyed my life? She didn't have an answer for that. Started with excuses, said she was scared, that she was protecting her daughter, that any mother would have reacted the same way. I told her that any decent person would have asked questions first. That family should mean giving each other the benefit of the doubt, at least long enough to verify the facts, that she'd known me for 30 plus years and should have known I wasn't capable of what Melissa accused me of. She got quiet. Then she said, I know, you're right, I failed you. I'm so sorry. I told her I appreciated her letting me know. Then I hung up. For the record, my name is Teresa B. Glatt. And that day I realized the old version of me was gone. She called back immediately. I didn't answer. She called 17 more times that day. Didn't answer any of them. She left voicemails, each one more desperate than the last, begging me to talk to her, to give her a chance to explain, to let her make things right somehow. I deleted them all without listening to more than a few seconds. The thing was, her apology didn't change anything. It didn't undo what happened. It didn't erase the months of being treated like a criminal. The job loss, the social isolation, the paranoia, the depression, none of it. All it did was confirm what I already knew. I was innocent, but being innocent never protected me from losing everything. Over the next few weeks, my entire family came out of the woodwork. Everyone suddenly wanted to talk, apologize, make things right. My mom sent me a care package with cookies, like, cookies could fix this. I gave them to my neighbor. My dad showed up at my apartment unannounced. I looked through the peephole, saw him standing there, almost opened the door. Then I remembered that barbecue, the disgust on his face. I opened the door just enough to speak through the chain lock. He said we needed to talk woman to man. I told him I record all conversations now. He could email me. His face went from determined to hurt to angry, started raising his voice about throwing away family over pride. I closed the door, got an email from him later. Long thing about family obligations, forgiveness, mistakes. Said my refusal was hurting my mother. I archived it without responding. My cousins tried the friendly approach. Tyler sent me a message about grabbing coffee. I agreed, curious what angle they'd take. We met at a chain coffee place. After small talk, he got to the real reason. Said the family missed me. Everyone regretted what happened. Melissa was struggling with guilt. I asked where he was during my investigation. He got uncomfortable, said it was complicated. I told him it wasn't. Either you believed I was capable of that, or you didn't. He chose to believe it. That was his choice. The thing is, I'd already moved on. In the 6 months between the accusation and Sarah's confession, I'd built a new life, new job, new friends, new apartment, new everything. I'd gone to therapy, worked through the anger and betrayal, and accepted that my old life was gone. I wasn't the same person anymore. The naive woman who showed up to family barbecues and trusted everyone. She died the day Sarah slapped me. This new version of me, I was careful, guarded. I documented everything, kept records of all my interactions, maintained boundaries like they were military checkpoints, and I absolutely refused to let anyone back in who'd thrown me away so easily. Sarah kept trying. Calls, texts, emails, showing up at my apartment building. I never engaged beyond telling her to stop contacting me. She'd apologize, say Melissa was just a kid, that she was manipulated, that everyone makes mistakes. I'd remind her that her mistake cost me my job, my reputation, my savings, and a year of my life. Then I'd walk away. My parents tried the mediation route, set up this whole family meeting without asking me, then called to tell me when and where to show up. I laughed and hung up. They got upset, said I was being stubborn, that family forgives. I sent them an email explaining that I didn't consider them family anymore and they should stop acting like they had any claim to my time or energy. Some relatives thought I was being too harsh, said I should forgive Melissa because she was young. Let me break down why that logic is absolute garbage. Melissa was 13 when she lied, old enough to understand consequences. She wasn't 6 years old making up a story about a monster under the bed. She deliberately, with premeditation, accused me of something she knew could put me in prison. She watched as I lost everything and said nothing for 6 months. And Sarah, she chose to believe a story with zero evidence over her own sister. Didn't ask questions, didn't wait for facts, just immediately went nuclear. That tells me exactly what she thought of me, exactly how little I mattered compared to her automatic assumptions. People love to say that family should forgive, that you only get one family, all that sentimental stuff. But here's the truth. Family is supposed to have your back. Family is supposed to give you the benefit of the doubt. Family is supposed to know you well enough to say, wait, that doesn't sound like something she'd do. Let's figure out what actually happened. My family did none of that. 2 years went by. I'd moved on with my life, doing better than before. Got promoted at my new job, started dating again slowly after Oliver's exit had proved who was in my corner and who wasn't. I met Max at a work conference through a mutual vendor. He was smart, grounded, the kind of man who asks before assuming and listens before judging. We took things slow. I told him there were chapters of my past I wasn't ready to unpack yet. He said, "When you're ready, I'll be here," and meant it. Made solid friendships with people who respected boundaries. My apartment started feeling like home. Bought furniture I liked, had artwork on the walls, plants I kept alive, small things that represented stability. Max helped me hang shelves one Saturday and didn't ask for a key. He waited until I offered it. That's what trust looks like rebuilt from the ground up. Then Melissa's 16th birthday rolled around. Sarah called from a number I didn't have blocked, caught me off guard. She launched into a prepared speech. Melissa wanted to see me, had written a letter, just wanted to apologize in person. Sarah begged me to consider it. These 3 years had been hard on Melissa, too. She'd lost friends, been bullied, said Melissa had nightmares, was in therapy twice a week, had tried to hurt herself once from guilt. Sarah was trying to make me feel responsible for Melissa's mental health. Same manipulation, different angle. I listened for 10 minutes straight. Sarah cycled through every argument. Melissa was just a kid. She'd been manipulated. She'd learned her lesson. Everyone wanted to heal. Why was I being so stubborn? When she stopped, I said one word: no. Sarah tried to argue, said Melissa was suffering, that she had nightmares, that she was in therapy, that she'd changed. I told Sarah that none of that was my problem. Melissa made her choices, and she could live with them. I'd made mine too. She was just a kid, Sarah said. She was old enough to know better, I replied. And you were definitely old enough to know better. You made your choice 3 years ago. I'm making mine now. Sarah started crying, saying I was being cruel, that Melissa just wanted closure. I told her that I got my closure when I blocked everyone's numbers and moved on with my life. What Melissa wanted was forgiveness so she could feel better about herself. That wasn't my responsibility. Don't call me again, I said, and hung up. She sent the letter anyway, mailed it to my apartment. I don't know how she got my address, whether she hired someone to find it or stalked me somehow. That violation bothered me more than the letter itself. The letter was exactly what you'd expect. Lots of "I'm sorry," lots of "I was young and stupid," lots of "I miss you." Melissa talked about how hard these years had been for her, how she'd lost friends, how kids at school called her a liar and worse, how she wished she could take it all back. She wrote about specific memories: learning to ride a bike, me teaching her, birthday parties where I'd shown up with gifts, times I'd helped her with homework. She was trying to remind me of who we used to be to each other, trying to trigger some emotional response that would make me want to reconnect. Standard manipulation tactic, and I recognized it because my therapist had prepared me for exactly this kind of thing. The letter was well written, I'll give her that. Probably went through multiple drafts. Maybe even had help from her therapist or Sarah. It hit all the right notes, acknowledged what she did, took responsibility, expressed genuine-sounding remorse, outlined how she'd changed, asked for nothing except a chance to apologize in person. If I didn't know better, if I hadn't lived through what her lie did to me, it might have been moving. But I did know better, and I recognized the letter for what it was. Not really an apology for my benefit, but a step in Melissa's healing process. Her therapist probably suggested it. Write a letter to the person you wronged. Express your feelings. Take accountability. Good therapeutic technique, sure, but the purpose was to help Melissa feel better, not to actually make amends to me. I read it once, then put it through the shredder. Not out of anger or spite, just pure practicality. That chapter of my life was closed. Some people online have told me I should have at least responded, that I should give her a chance, that holding on to anger is toxic. But here's what those people don't understand. I'm not holding on to anger. I'm not consumed by resentment. I'm not plotting revenge or enjoying their suffering. I'm just indifferent. The opposite of love isn't hate, it's apathy. And I'm completely apathetic about my former family. They're strangers now. People I used to know, like old classmates you run into at the store and exchange pleasantries with before moving on with your day. Except I don't even want the pleasantries. Max asked once if I'd ever reconsider. I told him I missed the idea of family, not the reality of what they showed me. He nodded and held my hand. That was the only answer either of us needed. Sarah called me again after Melissa's birthday, said I'd broken her daughter's heart by not showing up. I pointed out that Melissa broke my entire life with her lies, so we were hardly even. Sarah said I was holding a grudge against a teenager. I said I was protecting myself from people who'd proven they couldn't be trusted. Big difference. Oh. My parents tried one more time about 6 months ago. They're getting older. Started with a whole "life's too short" and "family is everything" routine. My mom sent me a message saying she wasn't getting any younger, that she wanted to see me before she died, that holding grudges was exhausting. Classic guilt trip. My dad followed up with something about how he'd made mistakes as a father, but he was trying to make it right. And wasn't that worth something? I thought about ignoring them completely. Then I realized that if I didn't meet with them, they'd keep trying different approaches, different guilt trips, different angles. So, I agreed to meet for coffee one time to make my position clear enough that they'd finally accept it. They said everyone had apologized, that it was time to move on, that I was being unfair by punishing them forever. We met at a neutral location, some chain coffee shop halfway between our areas. I got there early, picked a seat near the exit, brought a book, so I'd have something to do if they were late. They weren't. Showed up right on time, looking nervous. I met them for coffee. Only time I'd seen them face to face in 3 years. They looked older, more tired. My mom had more gray hair than I remembered. My dad had lost weight, looked smaller somehow. Part of me felt bad for them. The rest of me remembered what they'd put me through. They sat down, ordered coffee they barely touched. My mom cried through most of it, dabbing at her eyes with napkins she'd brought specifically for this purpose. My dad did his stoic thing, but I could tell he was emotional too. His hands were shaking when he lifted his cup. They said they missed me, that family gatherings weren't the same without me, that they'd made a mistake by not supporting me from the start. My mom talked about how empty the holidays felt, how she'd set a plate for me at Thanksgiving out of habit, and then cried when she realized I wasn't coming. My dad mentioned my birthday, how they'd sent a card that came back marked "Return to Sender," because I'd changed addresses without telling them. They were trying to show me how much my absence hurt them, how much they wanted me back. I listened to everything they had to say. Didn't interrupt, didn't argue, just let them get it all out. When they finally stopped talking and looked at me expectantly, I laid it out for them, plain and simple. When Sarah accused me, you didn't ask questions. You didn't call me aside and say, "What happened? Tell us your side." You just assumed I was guilty. You let me walk out of that barbecue alone, knowing what people were saying about me. And you didn't reach out once during the investigation. Not once. You let me go through months of hell completely alone. Let my life fall apart without even checking if the story made sense. That told me everything I needed to know about where I stood in this family. My mom tried to interrupt to explain, but I held up my hand. I'm not done. You've apologized now, and I appreciate that. I really do. But an apology doesn't create trust. Trust is built over time through actions, and you destroyed 30 years of trust in one afternoon. I'm not interested in rebuilding. I have a good life now, with people who respect me and believe in me. People who gave me the benefit of the doubt when things got complicated, who stood by me, who asked questions before making judgments. I don't need the stress of wondering if you'll throw me away again the next time someone makes an accusation. My dad started to speak, something about how they'd never make that mistake again, but I cut him off. You don't know that. You can't know that. Because when it mattered, when I needed you most, you failed. Not because you're bad people, but because you're human. You panicked. You believed the worst. You protected yourselves. I get it. But I'm protecting myself now. And that means keeping distance from people who've proven they can't be trusted when things get scary. My mom said I was being too harsh, that everyone deserves a second chance. I told her she might be right, but I was choosing not to give one. That was my choice to make, just like it was her choice to believe I was guilty without evidence. We haven't spoken since. The thing is, I don't think about them much anymore. Occasionally, something will remind me of the old days. Some random memory of Sunday dinners or holiday traditions, and I'll feel a twinge of something. Not quite sadness, not quite nostalgia, just acknowledgement that things used to be different. But then I remember what they put me through, and that feeling disappears fast, gets replaced by this quiet satisfaction that I got out, that I built something better, that I'm not stuck in a cycle of people who treat family as disposable. Max and I hit the 2-year mark last month. He's incredible, honestly, kind, grounded, patient. Works in marketing, has this dry humor that cracks me up even when I've had the worst day. He challenges me in good ways, and he never tries to fix me. We moved in together about 6 months ago. Got a place with an extra bedroom we're using as a home office. He knows the broad strokes of what happened with my family, that there was a false accusation that destroyed those relationships, but he hasn't pushed for details. Said when I'm ready to tell him everything, he'll listen, but he's not going to pressure me. That level of respect, of understanding boundaries, That's what real support looks like. He didn't need to know every detail of my past to trust me in the present. He judged me based on my actions, my character, how I treated him and others. Novel concept, right? We have a good group of friends now. Couples mostly. People we met through work or hobbies. We do game nights, dinner parties, weekend trips. Normal stuff that I thought I'd never have again after everything fell apart. These people know me as the woman who loves trivia, who makes terrible jokes, who's weirdly competitive about board games, not as the woman who was accused of something terrible. That's the gift of starting over. You get to be whoever you are now, not whoever you were when your life exploded. Some people have told me I'm too unforgiving, that I should let it go and reconnect with my family. Other people say I'm completely justified, that what they did was unforgivable. Honestly, I don't care what anyone thinks. This isn't about right or wrong, or who's justified, or who's being reasonable. This is about self-preservation and mental health. I learned a hard lesson 3 years ago. I learned that people will turn on you in a heartbeat if the accusation is serious enough, that your history with someone means nothing when fear and outrage take over, that being innocent doesn't protect you from losing everything. Those are brutal lessons, but they're valuable ones. They taught me to be more careful, more selective, more protective of the life I build. I also learned that I'm stronger than I thought. I survived being completely destroyed and rebuilt my life from nothing. Lost my job, my reputation, my family, my friends, my home, everything. And I still got up every morning, went through the motions, kept pushing forward until those emotions became real again. That's not something everyone can say. I'm proud of that strength, even though I wish I'd never had to develop it. I made new friends, found new family, and kept the people who actually stood by me. Created a life that doesn't depend on anyone who proved they couldn't be trusted. That's worth more to me than any family reunion or birthday party. Melissa is 19 now. I heard through social media that she's in college studying psychology. Part of me wonders if she's trying to understand why she did what she did. Part of me hopes she's learned, that she's grown into someone who thinks before acting. But that's a distant hope, the kind you have for strangers, like hoping a celebrity turns their life around, detached, impersonal. She's been in therapy consistently since the confession. I genuinely hope it helps her. Not for my sake, but for hers. Maybe she'll become a decent person. Maybe she already is one. Doesn't matter to me either way. Sarah reached out recently with a new approach. Melissa was struggling with severe anxiety and guilt. Her therapist suggested meeting might help. Sarah asked if I'd do a mediated conversation, offered to pay, do it anywhere, anytime. Just once. Just a chance for Melissa to say what she needed. I told her no. My life is peaceful now. I have a boyfriend I love and trust. We've talked about engagement. I'm up for another promotion. I play basketball Wednesday nights. I'm learning guitar. Trip to Colorado next month. Opening that door means inviting chaos back in. I'm not willing to do that. Every interaction with my former family has been draining, full of guilt trips and manipulation. I don't owe them anything. The last message I sent to Sarah was pretty clear. I told her I understood that Melissa was struggling, that I genuinely hoped she found peace and healing. But I also told her that my healing required distance from everyone involved, that I'd worked hard to build a life that didn't include them, and I wasn't going to compromise my mental health for theirs. She sent back a long message about closure, about how Melissa would never truly heal without facing me, about how I was being selfish. I didn't respond. Block that number too. She hasn't reached out since, at least not in any way I've noticed. That was 4 months ago. I know some people reading this would think I'm cold, maybe even cruel. They'd say a teenage girl made a mistake and I'm punishing her for life. But here's what they're missing. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm just living my life without them in it. There's a difference. Punishment implies I'm actively trying to hurt them, that I'm seeking revenge or trying to make them suffer. I'm doing none of that. I'm just existing in my own space, building my own happiness, protecting my own peace. They feel punished because they want something from me that I'm not willing to give. That's their problem, not mine. Max knows the broad strokes of what happened, though not all the details. He asked me once if I ever missed my old family. I told him honestly that I missed the idea of them, the version that existed before I found out how little faith they had in me. But I don't miss the reality of who they actually were when it mattered. The people who stood by me when things got tough. Those are the ones who matter now. He understood that completely. He comes from a complicated family situation himself, dealt with his own share of betrayal and disappointment growing up. So he gets that sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is walk away. No guilt, no second guessing. Just recognizing when a relationship is toxic and choosing yourself instead. We're talking about getting engaged next year, building something new, something that doesn't have the weight of betrayal hanging over it, something based on trust that's earned, not assumed. I saw my mom in public once about a year ago. We were in the same grocery store completely by chance. She saw me first, started walking toward me with this hopeful look on her face, like maybe enough time had passed that I'd be ready to talk. I turned and walked the other way without hesitation. I heard her call my name but didn't turn around, didn't slow down, just kept walking until I was in a different aisle. It wasn't dramatic or emotional. I just didn't want to have that conversation in the middle of the produce section. Got a text from her later that day. She said it hurt to see me walk away like that she just wanted to talk for a few minutes. I texted back that I understood, but I'd made my position clear and nothing had changed. She said she'd keep hoping I'd change my mind someday. I told her she was welcome to hope, but not to expect anything. That was the last direct contact we had. Recently, I found out through social media that Melissa posted something vague about forgiveness and learning from mistakes. Didn't mention me by name, but it was pretty obvious what she was talking about. Comments were full of people supporting her, saying everyone deserves forgiveness, that holding grudges is toxic. I didn't respond or react to the post. Didn't even care enough to feel annoyed. That's someone else's drama now, someone else's story. I'm just living my life. My life now is simple and straightforward, honestly. Work, gym, spending time with Max and our friends, working on my hobbies. I picked up woodworking last year, built a bookshelf that actually turned out decent, thinking about getting a dog, normal stuff, boring stuff, the kind of life people take for granted until they've had to rebuild it from scratch. People ask if I'll ever reconcile with my family. My answer is always the same. Never say never, but I'm not holding my breath. If reconciliation happens, it'll be because something fundamental changes, not because enough time has passed or because they've apologized enough. And honestly, I'm not sure what that fundamental change would even look like. Trust isn't something you can rebuild through apologies and time alone. It's rebuilt through consistent action over years, through proving you've changed, through demonstrating that you understand what you did wrong and why it matters. My family hasn't done any of that. They've just apologized and expected me to come back, like saying sorry is some magic reset button. It's not. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube, this video deserves to blow up.